The Age of Innocence is usually remembered as a tragic romance. Newland Archer and Eleanor Lenska, two people who love each other deeply but are crushed by the suffocating conventions of old New York. And the novel absolutely invites that reading. It is lyrical, restrained, full of longing, and devastating in its silences. But reread it, slowly, attentively, and the romance begins to feel strange. Because what defines this story is not that the lovers are forcibly separated or that society violently intervenes. What defines it is that again and again, the people involved decline to act, even when they have the means, the awareness, and the opportunity. They hesitate, they postpone, they aestheticize delay. And over time, they begin to treat inaction not as failure, but as depth. This is not a novel about repression. It's a novel about evasion. Once you see that, the novel reorganizes itself. The center of gravity shifts away from the doomed romance and toward a different question. Who, in this world, actually understands what moral action costs? And the unsettling answer is not Newland Archer, who talks endlessly about freedom, ethics, and integrity. And not even Eleanor Lenska. It's May Welland, a character readers are trained to dismiss as naive, passive, or merely decorative. This video isn't about exposing May as a villain or a manipulator. It's about recognizing her as something far more difficult to sit with. The only character in the Age of Innocence who consistently understands what moral action actually costs, and accepts that cost without romanticizing it. Meet the cast. Newland Archer is a young gentleman lawyer from one of New York's most established families. He is tasteful, well-read, socially secure, and faintly bored. He believes, sincerely, that he is more enlightened than the people around him. Eleanor Lenska is his cousin by marriage. European, estranged, emotionally marked by experience, she has lived through marriage, exile, and social vulnerability. She knows what consequence feels like. May Welland is Newland's fiancée. She is athletic, composed, disciplined, and socially impeccable. She is repeatedly described as innocent and repeatedly misread because of it. Everyone else, Lawrence Lefferts, Sillerton Jackson, the Luydens, exist less as characters than as functions. They classify, authorize, and enforce the moral grammar of old New York. The Academy of Music, the novel in miniature. Wharton opens the novel at the Academy of Music, and this scene quietly contains the entire book. The building is described as small, shabby, inconvenient, and yet old New York clings to it obsessively. Why? Because it keeps out the wrong people. Culture, in this world, is not about enjoyment. It is about exclusion. Newland arrives late, not by accident, but as a gesture. Even lateness has meaning here. It signals ease, entitlement, belonging. He plays the role perfectly while congratulating himself for seeing through it. Wharton gives us the key to his character almost immediately. Newland is, at heart, a dilettante, and thinking over a pleasure to come gives him a subtler satisfaction than its realization. That sentence is the moral blueprint of the novel. The opera that night is Faust. Temptation, bargains, knowledge acquired too late. Passion is safely staged, admired as art. Newland watches May in her white dress holding lilies of the valley, the most ritualized flower in the book, and assumes she doesn't even guess what it's all about. But Wharton is already undercutting him. May understands perfectly what is permitted to be felt. What she refuses is display. That's why abysmal purity matters. Abysmal suggests depth. Depth Newland refuses to explore. He wants May as an idea, innocence as blank space, a surface for his enlightened self-image. So he immediately slips into fantasy, reading Faust with her by Italian lakes, explaining it to her, shaping her responses. How Old New York thinks. Taste as law. Old New York does not argue morality. It classifies it. Lawrence Lefferts is the authority on form, meaning the appearance of propriety. Sillerton Jackson is the authority on family, meaning lineage and background. They do not persuade, they decide what is done. And once something is not done, the conversation stops. Mrs. Manson-Mingot exposes the hypocrisy at the heart of this system. Her house is conspicuously French, architecturally suggestive of immorality. And yet she is morally untouchable. Why? Because she has money, age, and authority. She violates norms openly because she can afford to. Ellen, by contrast, has vulnerability. And vulnerability is what Old New York punishes most harshly. We also learn, almost in passing, that Newland once had an infatuation with a married woman. This is not romantic colour. It's a pattern. Newland is drawn to desire that cannot demand action. Ellen Olenska, unreadable, and therefore dangerous. When Ellen enters the opera house, panic ripples through the room, though she has done nothing. Her danger lies in unreadability. Her Josephine look, empire waist, antique clasp, theatrical cut, evokes Napoleonic France, an earlier European aesthetic. In a culture obsessed with lineage and correctness, this backward-looking style reads as destabilizing. She does not translate cleanly into New York's moral grammar. In Old New York, legibility equals safety. When Sillerton Jackson says, "I didn't think the Mingots would have tried it on," what he means is not invited her, but made her visible. Newland is immediately drawn to Ellen. She unsettles him simply by speaking freely. And almost immediately he begins to defend her. But notice how. He defends Ellen as an idea. She becomes proof of his compassion, evidence of his modernity, a mirror for his imagined courage. Crucially, he does this only privately. Public acknowledgement terrifies him. Certification and experience, the Van der Luydens. When Ellen is socially boycotted, the appeal goes upward, to the Van der Luydens, the apex of the social pyramid. They solve the problem instantly by including Ellen at dinner. But what happens is not justice, it's recertification. Ellen is not defended, she is authorized. At that dinner, Newland becomes mesmerized by Ellen's lived experience, the authority in her beauty, the consciousness in her gaze, the sense of being marked by consequence. Innocence begins to look childish. Experience begins to look like depth. It was the lightest touch, but it thrilled him like a caress. Nothing overt happens, yet desire enters decisively, through restraint. Houses, flowers, and the illusion of choice. Ellen's house is the first place where Newland's categories collapse. It is intimate, expressive, full of faded charm. It does not perform respectability. It reveals a life. It's you who are telling me, opening my eyes to things I'd looked at so long that I'd ceased to see them. He tells her, already slipping into the role of the awakened man. Then come the flowers. Lilies of the valley for May, pale, traditional, repetitive. Yellow roses for Ellen. Too rich, too strong. Newland sends roses, and then removes his card. Desire without declaration, feeling without ownership. When Ellen's divorce becomes real, Newland tells others, "I think that's for her to decide." It sounds progressive, but later, alone with her, he quietly persuades her not to do it. Gently, reasonably, compassionately. This is where moral evasion becomes harm. Ellen's fur that night, muffled throat, bare arms, is read as transgression because New York reads women's bodies as social statements. And yet, despite her apparent defiance, she yields. Very well. I will do what you wish. She understands what he is really saying. Your freedom is not worth their discomfort. Performance, retreat, and the red meteor. At the Chagrin, Newland is deeply moved by silence and reticence, the kinds of suffering he admires when they require nothing of him. Do you think he will send her a bunch of yellow roses tomorrow morning? Ellen recognises his language of feeling even when he denies it. She retreats to Skyttercliff, safety over freedom. Newland follows her to a house that feels not just old-fashioned but funerary. And Warton gives us one of the novel's most electric images, the flash of the red meteor against the snow. Ellen's red cloak is refusal, red against ritual whiteness. She is motion against stasis. Newland experiences her as interruption, not continuity. He wants fire and ice, passion and purity, intensity and legitimacy, without changing himself. Later, May becomes ice, Ellen becomes fire, and Newland oscillates between them, congratulating himself for suffering. Ellen is not innocent here. She invites intimacy, withholds declaration, positions Newland as the one who understands. This isn't manipulation. It's survival. You're so shy and yet you're so public. Her most devastating cultural diagnosis. Newland reads The House of Life. Desire sublimated into art. Passion without consequence. St. Augustine, May's ethical seriousness. At St. Augustine, May finally reveals the depth that readers so often deny her. If you feel yourself in any way pledged, even by her getting a divorce, don't give her up because of me. This is not innocence. This is ethical seriousness. Ellen unsettles Newland emotionally. May unsettles him morally. When Newland learns that Count Olenski wants Ellen back, he explodes. I would rather see her dead. The pure eruption of his rescue fantasy. Ellen enters, furious at Beaufort's bouquet. Flowers are public claims. She rejects theatrical love, including Newland's tendency to aestheticize her. They speak openly at last. Isn't it you who made it impossible? I've made no secret of having done it for you. Newland kneels and kisses her satin shoe. An act of worship, not partnership. And Ellen delivers the line that defines her moral clarity. I can't love you unless I give you up. The telegram arrives immediately. Society moves faster than conscience. Book 2. Administration replaces drama. The wedding is dull, fossilized, prehistoric. The patroon's house, the one Ellen could imagine being happy in, becomes May's home. Ellen makes the dream imaginable. May inhabits it. May refuses drama. She governs. This is where the novel quietly insists on something unfashionable. Immorality is not profound. Self-indulgence is not authenticity. Desire is not destiny. In Europe, Newland dreams and May judges. Monsieur Rivière appears intellectually alive, materially stalled. When May calls him common, Newland realizes marriage will quietly exclude the life he imagined preserving. At Newport, May becomes Diana. Disciplined, chaste, exact. She hits the bullseye. Newland Archer never releases an arrow. At the pier, he waits for Ellen to turn so fate can decide. He does nothing. At the Blenkers' house, Warton is merciless. The broken Cupid, the pink parasol, which isn't even Ellen's, and the cringe. Newland kisses an object that isn't even Ellen's. May hits targets. Archer never does. The Brougham scene and the window Boston becomes fantasy. Adultery becomes art. Ellen refuses money. Real moral action. Newland offers destiny language that commits him to nothing. In May's Brougham, snow falling, he says, each time you happen to me all over again. They are in his wife's carriage. Ellen asks the question that shatters the dream. Have you ever been there? She has. He hasn't. He steps into the cold. His tears freeze. Back home, he opens the window, mistaking sensation for freedom. And the thought arrives, what if it was she who was dead? This is moral collapse. May notices immediately. Newland? Are you ill? Practical. Future-minded. She thinks in consequences, he thinks in feelings. Poor May. he says. He pities her for existing. Everyone else says poor Ellen. He says poor May. But May knows more than he thinks. She knows Ellen arrived alone. She knows Newland forgot his promise. She knows something is wrong. But she refuses drama. I shall never worry if you're happy. This is not submission. It is containment. Newland comforts himself with the belief that he will always know May completely, that she will never surprise him by a new idea, a weakness, a cruelty of an emotion. The novel is almost laughing at him. He is the least perceptive character in the room. Faust, again, May's checkmate back at the opera. Faust, again. Same stage, same rituals, but everything decided. May wears her wedding dress. Not sentiment, but jurisdiction. When Newland finally prepares to speak, May's face has a curious tranquility of expression that seemed drawn from some secret inner source. That source is knowledge. But what does it matter now it's all over? Ellen is going to Europe. It was settled that morning. Newland is the last to know. May gathers up her wedding dress and drags it away, still white but muddied. Marriage here is eroded by someone else's fantasies. At the farewell dinner, Ellen wears heavy amber beads, the same ones from childhood. He loves her most when she looks wrecked. Obsession feeds on loss. And suddenly he understands. Everyone knows. The separation has been managed all along. He thought he had a private drama. They have been running a public containment strategy. When May reveals her pregnancy, and that she told Ellen before she was sure, she delivers the final move. I told her I was sure, and you see I was right. She acts in advance of proof. That is how old New York works. The ending. Dallas, the museum, and aesthetic failure. Decades later, Newland stands in a museum. Preservation without life. The Cesnola rooms trigger memory. Everything is catalogued, official, safe. So is his life. Something he knew he had missed. The flower of life. The world changes anyway. Dallas marries Fanny Beaufort. Old scandals lose their force. In Paris, Newland does not go up. It's more real to me here than if I went up. He chooses memory over consequence. The ending mirrors the pier. He waits. She does not signal. He calls it fate. Without Newland's aesthetic sensibility, this novel would not exist. His longing gives it shimmer. His failure gives it beauty. But aesthetic intensity cannot build a life. That work belongs to May Welland. May is the unsung heroine because she understands what kind of life can actually be sustained, and commits to it without illusion. She tells Dallas that Newland once gave up the thing he most wanted and calls it moral strength. She understood the system better than Newland ever did. She governed quietly, acted early, refused illusion, and died young. May is tragic not because she loses, she is tragic because she wins. And no one ever calls it heroism,